Welcome to the Mendoza Podcast, financial talk that makes sense. I'm your Illinois State Controller, Susanna Mendoza, and I want to help answer all the questions you have about money matters, but we're maybe afraid to ask. We're going to learn a lot and have some fun together. Hi, we're back today with another great topic, navigating finances with your partner. Is money really one of the things couples argue about most? And how do you navigate the often sensitive topic? We will discuss all of that today with my guest, licensed marriage and family therapist and nationally certified counselor, Margie Wheelhouse. Welcome, Margie.
Thank you.
Well, seriously, this is right up your wheelhouse.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
Exactly. Yep. I get that a lot.
Well, tell me a little bit about your background, Margie. I think our viewers would love to know.
Yeah. Well, I've been a counselor for about 15 years, and I focus mainly on couples, also adults who also deal with money. Yeah. And before that, I was a journalist.
So in that context, when you're counseling couples who have conflicts about money, like how often does that come up?
All the time. All the time. Yeah.
So relative to all of the things that you counsel couples with this therapy, what's, where's it rank?
I would say in the top 5 from who I see. It's not what people don't come in specifically for counseling about money, but it is in there.
It comes up, right?
It comes up
in the course of bringing things out,
Exactly,
what the underlying factors are that perhaps, cause problems in a relationship. And, in your experience when you're talking to these couples, like how can fighting over money impact that relationship?
Yeah, terribly. In short, it can have a big impact because it's not just a topic to fight about. We deal with how people fight, but it's important because it's not just green stuff, that you have in your wallet. It's your heart and your soul and your time and your effort and your education. It's your resources. And so fighting over that is really fighting over almost everything.
So the couples that you talk to, are they most often married couples or couples that are perhaps engaged or dating and thinking about getting married, and then they realize that they're having these, conflicts before they even get married?
Yeah, great question. It would be great if it were the latter. I think these things come out too often, well, sometimes during the planning of weddings, especially the pricier ones, and after people are married. It would be better to talk about these things prior, which I do in premarital counseling, and it's a great thing because it's nice to find out where your expectations meet reality.
Yeah. I do think a lot of people have a lot of wishful thinking, right? You go into the relationship thinking, oh, well, we can pool our resources and it'll be okay. Once we get married, they'll understand that we have to live within our means. But, if you have these really bad financial habits, I find at least that if you come into a relationship with bad financial habits, it's hard to break free of those. And it's typically a pattern that will continue. Do you see that?
It can continue. It's harder. It's easier to break free of those habits than it is to break someone else free of those habits. And that's the thing about relationships.
For you to make the decision, right? That you're going to break free of the habit versus making
your spouse trying to say, do we need to be buying that? That's the art and the science there, is to find out what to do when you clash and you find out your spouse doesn't have the habits that make you feel secure and hopeful.
Sure. And so for those couples that you're counseling who are having these arguments about finance, what's the most common source, I guess, of the argument? Is it spending side? Is it, who makes enough, do you make enough money? Who earns more? Or is it related to debt specifically? What do you think the biggest issue is?
That's
or is it all
hard.
of the
Those
above?
are all so important. I don't know if I could pick one. Spending probably is where it comes out because, no matter how few of resources, somebody wants to buy something. And if this person wants to buy a new car and this person wants to fund an IRA, what do you do? And so it's where do we put it?
You fund the IRA and you don't get a new car, right?
Yeah, well, there you go.
It's not that difficult of advice. But
unless your spouse says, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I deserve a new car.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that later.
Do you not love me enough? Right? I mean, these are probably things. People judge their, their spouse's love or their partner's love based on what they can buy them. And it's going to be a ticket to disaster.
Well, yeah, I think so. Then disaster is recurrent fights and misunderstandings based on expectations that people don't talk out. Yeah, that's why talking about them as soon as you notice, the clash of expectations, then it's more about how we talk about it, not what we're talking about, but how we talk about it. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, that new car is ridiculous, which, might bring one response, it's, hey, I want to make sure that I feel secure in my old age, which brings a different response, hopefully.
And do you find that couples are even really educated about what that means? Because, young people, we think we're invincible, and you're not necessarily thinking about retirement when you're starting a relationship, and you're just about, it's all about love and excitement and all those things. And, you imagine yourself doing all these cool things with your spouse someday. And you're not thinking about, like, the excitement factor is not in the bucket of, let's say, for retirement when we're old,
yes.
right?
People don't talk about the non-glamorous things. They're talking about their wedding dress or their shoes or where we're going to go on our honeymoon. But what you're talking about is cars and IRAs are big things. That's not where it starts. It starts with, let's go out for coffee instead of making it at home, and all the assumptions. And so if you weren't taught financial literacy, in school or specifically by your parents, you have what you learned. And so if I had a nickel for every time someone said, well, I was raised to believe, because you have two different people and they were raised two different ways.
Sure. Yeah. So set the scene for me, right? I mean, I need to talk about a difficult money situation with my spouse or partner. Or I found out that my spouse, without consulting, right, has spent a boatload of money on something that I think is just ridiculous, right? You mentioned that example before. How the heck do I even start this conversation?
Yeah, that just asking that question will put you ahead, because I think a lot of people just come out and say, that's ridiculous. Well, now we've got another problem, and that is someone feels judged or, lampooned. And just saying, hold on, I think that, I'd like to talk about big purchases. That's important to me. But I think respectfully, it's a big topic, just like the other big topics that we talk about. And so in order to get traction and kind of get on the same page with navigating the financial boat in the same direction, it requires cooperation. And cooperation requires people to be calmer and to be respectful and to be inquisitive. What did your parents teach you about money? Oh, here's what I learned. Let's see if there's a third and a fourth and a fifth way.
Yeah, and I think, when you have couples that are on polar opposite sides of that equation in terms of how they were raised, or, I don't know, is there a situation where that's where you do say, well, let's go to an independent third party?
Yes.
Because, I'm very set in my ways, you're very set in your ways. Why don't we just go talk to somebody who's a professional?
Yes.
And they can help us both learn better ways to do this together. I don't know, is that?
I think that's an excellent point. And it doesn't even have to be a financial advisor, although that's great, but it can be a book or a resource, something other than my mother and your father. Because if I say, hey, debt is a terrible idea, nobody should have it, and you go, my parents, they had a lot of debt and they're wonderful people. So to talk about money without insulting the other person's family, but we don't realize that is what is happening. So if somebody's railing against debt, not realizing that the other person, funded their college through debt or other important things, that's when you get into the problems.
So on that topic of, how not to say things, I mean, we've already used the word ridiculous, right? That's a no-no. What other words or phrases should we kind of avoid, right? These are the common words or phrases that your clients talk about that you're like, oops, red flag. What are those things that should be avoided when it comes to words? Because as you know, words have power, right?
Absolutely.
And there's a lot that goes behind words that you use, whether it's judgmental or powerful or uplifting or, degrading, right? So what words or phrases should we avoid using when discussing money or other potentially heavy subject matter issues that your clients go seek your help for?
Yeah, that's so important. And we could have a list of words: ridiculous, idiot, anything evaluating someone's intelligence, anything critical. Criticism is one of the 4 worst things that we can do in relationships to destroy the relationship. It eats away at a person's sense of dignity or respect. And so anything that is a criticism is going to make it much harder to get your point across.
So when thinking about like couples therapy just in general, right? I mean, how can therapy really help couples who are constantly fighting about money? And, on that question too, I would say, like, these couples, by the time they get to you, I'm assuming there's been a ton of fights, right?
Yeah.
Like you
Oh,
don't
yes.
just
Oh,
immediately
yes.
go to, hey,
Yeah.
let's go get couples therapy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So are these relationships even really salvageable by the time they get to you?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. That's good for
Overwhelmingly,
people to know.
overwhelmingly, yes. Unfortunately, you're right. People delay and delay. I think therapy is I think having a moment. People are starting to realize what it is, but it still has this stigma from, I'm not sure, bad experiences or cultural differences. And so people think of therapy as sort of the last resort on the way to divorce. And I think that's sort of like going to the doctor when you're about to die. It's just not, it's,
Yeah.
you can probably be saved, with some good antibiotics. Fortunately, though, for therapy, there's so much that people don't know, and they come and they discover that a different outside perspective can be a game changer.
Sure.
And so whether they're fighting about money or kids or where to live or all kinds of things, it's how you talk about it, not what you're talking about. So the news is great.
So, I mean, the concepts of managing money well are pretty set in stone, right? I mean, so you're not reinventing the wheel, but it's amazing how few people actually know good fiscal habits,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So things as simple as, don't put that sweater on a credit card if you don't have the money in the bank to pay for it today, right? People learning how to leverage debt. Because you mentioned earlier, for example, well, my parents bought everything without debt. Debt's bad.
Yeah.
And then others who are the opposite extreme. Well, we put everything on debt, right? And, you're indebted up to your eyeballs.
Yeah.
But there's also good debt, right? Like if you have a
Investment.
mortgage and you're building equity on your home and you're paying a low interest rate, but, this is still a debt, but it's a positive debt. It's giving you an asset. When you pay for a brand new car, that's not good debt. It really isn't. I don't care what anybody says. It's not good. I always tell young people, especially don't worry about the car because the minute you take it off the lot, it's already lost so much value, right?
Yes.
You're never going to recover it on a sale.
Yes.
So get a partially used vehicle that can still have a warranty attached to it.
Yeah.
That's going to cost you thousands less.
Right.
And will, it still loses its value, but it retains a little bit more than a brand new car, right? And it'll still give you that good use, almost the feel of a new car without the payment attached to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, don't use payday lenders,
Yeah.
right? Put money in a
Yes.
bank and have it earn interest for you. But it's these simple concepts that so many people don't know.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that when you go to the checkout counter and they say, well, do you have the credit card for our business? You can save 20% today. Your answer should be no.
Right.
Don't do it.
Yes.
You don't really, you should never open up those because number one, they ding your credit when you open up a new line of credit that you don't need. And number two, if you put that sweater on a credit card and you forget to pay it, that sweater is going to end up costing you like 5 sweaters.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And so it's these things that those are things that I think start lots of arguments, at least from talking to my girlfriends, right, when we're having a cocktail.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's many issues are just so prevalent in relationships.
Yeah. And I think that people would talk about that people would describe that argument as saying, oh my gosh, she didn't even want me to buy a new pair of shoes. No, that's not what it is. It's about how we buy it. So you're describing all kinds of wonderful principles for financial literacy and how to have a good bottom line. And it's about how do we say this diplomatically? How do we help raise someone's awareness without cutting them down? How do we build the relationship by talking about our hopes and dreams rather than getting divided by our feeling insulted or being afraid that this person's never going to let me go to Disney World because they're they want to put every penny in stocks.
Yeah, and there's some truth to you have to enjoy the moment as well, right? So when you punish yourself, some people see it as punishing themselves by saving so much money that you don't enjoy life while you're living it, right? And so I think it's finding that balance and having a partner who understands that you respect the value of the money that you're earning because it's hard work, right? But you also need to learn how to stretch the value of that dollar, how to make it work for you by finding the right investment vehicles, but also putting a little bit aside for your fund account, right? So that you don't have to feel like you're living like a miser when you have enough funds coming in to be able to have some fun as well, right?
Yeah.
So going on that vacation, but just knowing that you can afford it. That's the thing. I think people get into these conflicts when they, go to Disney World every year when they certainly can't afford to go to Disney World every year.
Right.
that's not even going to be a fun trip.
Right, yes.
Right? I'm
Because
sure you hear couples that fight the whole time they're there,
yeah,
right?
you might pay for it with your marriage.
Yes, and you don't need Mickey or Minnie having to separate you in a dispute. At Disneyland, that would not be fun.
No, it'd be fun for me to see, but yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that people can head these off by having the talk ongoing. When they talk about hopes and dreams, don't just expect it, oh, and then we'll retire and buy a house and, talk about it. How are we going to buy that house? How much do we need to put aside to get it? How much do we need? How much can we spend on vacation and still have money for that thing that you want? Because I think that gives you the diplomatic leverage that you're talking about to make a point for what you want. So if you say, yeah, I do want to go to Disney World, but also remember how we wanted to get a horse to be in the pasture in our retirement home in Virginia or whatever.
Yeah.
You want to talk about all those things because whatever we buy, that's something else we can't have.
Yep,
And so we need to talk about the things that the purchases mean we don't get as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And those credit cards, if you just think that you can deal with this later, you'll be looking at dealing with that later plus a divorce. I mean, it just,
right.
I think I have seen so many couples literally end their relationships or their marriages.
Yes.
Because they just couldn't control their spending. And they weren't talking back and forth to your point.
Right.
I think my husband and I, we talk about our finances all the time. I manage the state's finances. He manages our finances. And not only ours, his parents, my mom, who now has dementia, and David and I, of course, do it together, but he really takes the lead on his parents, my mom, and my brother, who's now permanently disabled, who had 5 strokes. And so really, I'm his power of attorney, my husband as well. And, he does this for our family, which is such a huge weight off my shoulders, but we talk about it every month nonetheless, right? So there's nothing I don't know about, but he's very much on top of it. And we have to do the same for our own finances. And, some months, maybe I was a little too generous with our son for his birthday, which is right around Christmas time. So it gets scary, right?
Yeah.
So every now and then I do little things like, and I give these tips to other Illinoisans on how to save money. If you know that you're going to have certain expenditures that are going to happen, like for example, Christmas time.
Yes, it's not a surprise.
Right, it's not a surprise. You know it's coming. And you see a fire sale somewhere of something that would be a great gift for your kid or for your spouse or for a family member for Christmas. Does it make sense? Buy it at a dramatically reduced cost and then just set it aside. Right now you've got one less gift you have to worry about at Christmas that's going to cost you a lot more if you wait. It's little things like that, but talking about them with your spouse. Hey, guess what? I saw this great sale. I'm going to pick up this gift for David.
Yes.
And, one less thing we got to worry about. Just don't forget about it, right? Because you're like, oh my gosh. But I think it's like having those conversations. And I'll give you another fun example of when we first moved to our house in Portage Park. It snowed really bad. And my husband was out there shoveling the snow. He'd go out and he'd shovel the snow, and it would take, a long time because there was a lot of snow. And I would say, honey, just get a snowblower. And he's like, no, we have this like tiny little patch. It's city living, so you don't have a big yard. You don't have a huge driveway. But he's like the nicest guy. He'll go out and not just do ours, but he'll do all the neighbors, right? And I told him, honey, just get a snowblower. Yeah. Well, we can budget for it, right? And year 2, same thing. He's at it, comes in. It's like 3 hours of shoveling, not just ours, but all our neighbors. And I'm like, honey, you really need to get that snowblower. And he's like, no, and I said, listen, honey, your wife is telling you to get the snowblower. Go ahead and get it, right? You know how many other husbands would love for their wife to tell them to go buy their gadget and buy whatever gadget you need the best. Yeah. So we can budget for that, right? Because that's, but by doing that, I'm like saying to him, I know that you have this need. Yeah. I value also your time and the hard work. Right. And you can go out there and do the whole entire block. Yeah. And then guess what? There is, true story, a secret snowplow society. I know this. Because at like 4:30 or 5 in the morning, these men get up and they go out and see who can be the first to start snow plowing the street. Wow. And it's a club I did not know existed, but I do believe it exists. My husband's one of the founding members. And all kidding aside, it made his life easier. Yeah. Our whole block gets snow plowed. Yeah. And as long as you know that this is a purchase that is a smart purchase, I'm showing respect for him. And when I need something, if it makes sense, we talk about it, and then
Right.
maybe he surprises me by not giving me any grief on something that
Yes.
will make my life easier too. And
Yeah.
it's the communication that I really think is super key, whether you're talking money or any other subject
Right.
in a relationship.
Yes, yes. And it's consideration. You're talking about wanting him to have something that you can see that he wants, which if you were fighting about money, he might get the impression you didn't care about his, his labor or his heart or whatever, because you'd think, well, I'd like you to have the snowblower, but we haven't saved for our kids' college. So,
Exactly.
but if you've been careful, you can be more generous. You can be generous to the neighbors. And also you describe what happens when couples learn how to talk about money, is it actually can be fun. You can say, oh, hey, here's a sale on something for Christmas, we'll hide it.
Yes.
My in-laws were a good example of this. They both were very good about communicating about money, and I think they gamified it. They found this bargain here and they cut corners there, but it added up to good things. And I think it was, when it's done right and when people communicate well, it can be a really good thing for the relationship.
Sure, it is
can
fun.
be fun. You can dream together, but you can make the dreams happen,
Yes.
and you can have fun along the way. Yeah, the opposite of fighting.
For sure. I totally agree. And I do think that, again, money is one of those things, like I grew up in a household that my parents would always say, never talk about money. It's like rude
There's
to
a
talk
lot
about
of that.
money,
There's
right?
so much of that, yeah.
Yeah, and I do know, I realize this is a fact, that the people who don't talk about money are people that don't have much money. It's a painful subject to talk about. It's almost taboo, right? No one wants to sit there and think about all the things that they don't have and how hard it is to have the little that they do have and how difficult, almost magical it is to learn how to stretch it, right? These are difficult subjects to talk about. And so I grew up in a household that said, don't ever talk about money. It's rude. But I honestly think it's because my parents just didn't have a lot, and they, there's not a point of pride about that, right? But I'm so proud of the job that my parents did in teaching me how to manage the little that they did have, on, understanding the value of finding value in things and not wasting the little that you have. That has certainly been very effective for me as controller in understanding how during difficult times I understand the value of stretching the value of a dollar, right, for taxpayers, of honoring their hard work. But I do think that, when couples talk about it, it's meaning that I respect you and trust you enough to talk about something that might be a difficult thing for me to talk about. And the more you talk about it, the more you're going to learn, and the more you're going to really make your partner feel that you see them, you value them and their hard work, and that together you guys can do it. So first step is going to see Margie in her wheelhouse, Margie wheelhouse.
That's right.
Yep. So Margie, anything else you want to add before we close up?
No, I think it's an incredibly important topic. I think couples should talk about it before they get married or live together. And also, it's never too late. As you described, you had parents who didn't want to talk about money, and here you are talking about it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important
at the end of the day, though, what happens if you just can't agree? So we're talking about meeting and So do you recommend that, or how does that work when you're in a therapy session with someone and you see that this is just not going to get better?
Yeah. Oh.
Do you make them come to that decision themselves, or is that something you're like,
that's a relational thing,
Uh-huh.
and so absolutely they need to come to it themselves. If they're in there fighting about it, though, it's usually there's something to be learned. So where they're still discussing it, there's still hope. It's when people give up. And think, this person's never going to hear me. But that's never my call. Yeah,
for sure. Obviously, you're not going to tell them to get a divorce. But it's, they get to that on their own, right?
They get to that on their own. And I think through therapy, it's surprising how often they get to a better place.
That's great. Well, that's good news. We end on a happy note that we can overcome any of these obstacles. But the important thing is to talk about it.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? And to truthfully be open-minded to understanding the concerns of the partner who is worried about this, right? Like, you've got to be able to talk through it.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, though, I will say math is math. And if you don't have enough money coming in, you shouldn't spend it. And whoever is telling you that is the partner who's thinking about the future.
Yes.
And wants to build a future with you that is free of that
stress. Which is a good thing.
Yes,
exactly.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a caring thing to want to have your fiscal house in order.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Margie.
Thanks for having me.
You really helped highlight, I think, some of the challenges that couples face when discussing money matters. Again, sensitive, right? And
Yeah.
but more importantly, how to better communicate with each other.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks for
having
having
you
me.
here, and we'll see you next time.